G'day everyone on Facebook world. It's time for another video about the 2019 Australian federal election. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about a policy that the Labor Party has announced to do with hospitals. But before I do that, can I get you to do me a favour? Jump in the comments, ask me what you think's important, or talk about what you think's important, or ask what you would like me to have a talk about or look into when it comes to the federal election this year. There are plenty of important things to discuss, and what I might think important, you may not, and vice versa. So, yeah, jump on, tell me what you think matters, and I might have a look at that. So today, Bill Shorten has announced a further $2.8 billion for hospitals, for state hospitals, which on the surface of it sounds like a good deal. I don't necessarily think we should spend more money on health. I think we should, but it's how and when and who pays for it that I certainly have some issues with. So the first thing to understand about health, I think that in federal politics, the Labor Party are very good at raising scare campaigns against the Liberal Party. You might remember the Mediscare issue from the last election. There's a few problems. Well, there's one major problem with that. Federally, hospitals are not responsibility of the federal government. Primarily, the state governments control the funding for hospitals. So people don't really get that it's actually a state level issue, along with education and a few other things. So what the federal government's responsibility in the area of health is primarily research and that sort of thing. It's a higher level. It's not on the ground medical facilities and hospitals, etc. It's more paving the way for research and other things. There's certainly a responsibility of the government to distribute funds to the state governments through GST and other collections, but to actually directly fund hospitals isn't the role of the federal government. So that's my first issue with that. The second issue with that is the Labor Party are really good at saying they're going to spend a lot of money on health, and education's their other favourite thing, but they rarely fund it through the Treasury. They rarely have it budgeted. They rarely know how they're going to pay for it. They simply know that it's a popular thing to say we're going to spend more money on hospitals, and so they just throw out these things. The problem is that when they get into power, and they're the government, they increase the spending on things like health and education without having the ability to pay for it, unless they throw out, an extra $200 billion worth of taxes, and then someone else's responsibility down the line to figure out how the country is actually going to pay for these things. So on the surface of it, and I haven't looked into this particular policy too deeply, I think it's good to spend money on hospitals. I think that both sides of politics are actually looking strongly at increasing spending on hospitals and things like that. My only concern is who's going to pay for it. It would be nice if everyone in the country had their own private room for any medical thing they might need, but still at the same time you've got to figure out who's paying for it. You've got to balance the need for these things with the ability to pay for these things. And my fear is that Labor Party rarely really ever looks at that second part where they go, who's paying for it? How are we going to fund these things? All right, thank you for listening. It's another election video. I'll try and do one every day. I'll speak to you tomorrow.